So this morning, multiple days after seeing these protests, these rallies, many of them peaceful, some of them violent. What are your thoughts this morning on where we go from here as a nation? And then we'll talk about what corporate America can do.
Well, I think as we begin this discussion, everybody still focuses on the economy, but we have to remember that the demonstrations we see now, which many of them have started peacefully. We have information and intel that some of them are being infiltrated by supremacists, white supremacist groups and other groups, and they've started out peaceful because people are frustrated in this nation. And this didn't just start over the last 3 murders that we've seen at the hands of police. We've seen murders all throughout this country over the last few decades, and then we see the lack of interest and the lack of efforts to support communities at risk. And they're not just African-American communities, our Hispanic and Latina communities. And we have to also remember that poor white communities have been devastated. And so we have leadership that's pitting poor whites against blacks and Hispanics, when in fact, we are all in this together. And so as we look at the unrest now, our young people are frustrated. I was born in 1950, and I was there watching and even involved with some of the things on the periphery as a student with what Dr. King and the civil rights leaders were doing. But at least they had civil obedience, and it was coming from a time that we'd struggled. Our young people today didn't experience that. And so while they're coming out, voicing the frustrations they've had for years, and then people in some of these crowds, and some are African Americans too, who were there for not for goodwill. And so once they start, you have reactions from people in the crowd. Whereas on Sunday, I don't see a lot of news where the students in the Atlanta University Center here in Atlanta, led by Clark Atlanta University, had over 1,000 young people who marched from the Atlanta University Center to downtown. Not one incident. They were commended by the National Guard and others because they prepared for this. But what we have to do, corporate America, the leadership from nonprofit organizations, our faith community, and our governmental leaders, we've got to come together. We think what's happened this past week is something. Just imagine what's going to happen in weeks to come this summer. And we're dealing with COVID-19, which has devastated a lot of our businesses and community. And now you have the civil unrest going on. This is going to be a bad summer, but the results, if government does not get involved, if the leaders don't get involved, we're going to be waiting for years for economic recovery. And somebody's got to tell the person who holds the most powerful position in the world of any leader of any nation that he cannot continue to pour fuel on the fire. He's got to be a president that represents the greatest nation in the world and stop all of these tweetings that is inciting more riots, is causing people to be more angrier than what they are, talking about sending troops in and others to come and enforce in these cities to deal with what's going on. That is not in the best interest of Americans. So with that said, as we look, and I'm a business owner, I've been in business now for for a total of 25 years. I have not laid off one employee, and I have several hundred, since this pandemic really hit. Because if it weren't for those employees, my businesses wouldn't be successful. And I commend all of those who are on the front line, the first responders, but my transportation company runs part of Modern Mobility. We have to get seniors and those with disabilities to their dialysis treatments, to their doctor's appointments. We have to get them even to get groceries. And so my employees on the front line, I've had to quarantine a few because we've had some seniors that did have COVID-19, but we paid for that. So what we need to understand, if we're going to have economic recovery, we got to start dealing with these racial disparities. We got to deal with the challenges that are here. And so my organization, I represent the 100 Black Men of America. We have over 125,000 young people in our mentoring program. Economic empowerment is one of our pillars of our organization. But what's got to happen, and I'm happy you're having this discussion, we cannot condemn those people who protested. Yes, we've got to carve out the bad seeds that are in the middle of those, just as the bad seeds in our law enforcement department. They got to be carved out.